Hereditary is a new horror film from the studio A24, and it stars Toni Collette as well as some other talented actors that I don't know the names of because I'm horrible. And if I want to get into the basics of what this movie's about, it's basically about how Toni Collette's character is very jaded. She's gone through a lot of tragedy and hardship in her life, and her whole family has to deal with a new tragedy within the family, and then bad things start to happen through that tragedy. Toni Collette's character goes through a spiral of grief, and her kids are not doing well. It's a big drama, and then supernatural stuff starts to happen. That's basically all I'm really gonna say about this movie, because I went in knowing absolutely nothing, and it consistently surprised me. All I really knew about Hereditary going in was that it was a horror movie with Toni Collette from A24, and people were comparing it to The Babadook. I didn't watch a single trailer, I just went in completely blind, and I think that's really the best way to go into this movie, not knowing anything. Because not knowing anything just really, it made this experience even better for me. Hereditary is pretty frickin' great. There are certainly certain people that aren't gonna like Hereditary. There are people that are gonna say this movie is way too slow and it's not scary enough. A lot of it is just kind of boring because it's a slower artistic movie, but I find those horror movies way more interesting than other horror movies. People, like I said, were comparing this to The Babadook because it has themes of grief and loss. And The Babadook is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It is an incredible movie. It blew me away in every way. I love pretty much everything about that movie, so when they were comparing it to The Babadook, I was really excited to see what this movie would be. But this movie has some similarities thematically to Babadook. It, explores grief and loss and what can go through a person's head when that happens. But it does it very, very differently. It's very different than The Babadook, even though it goes through some similar themes. This movie feels very different from every other horror movie, because what this movie does is it has horror cliches. It has a weird kid, it has supernatural things that go on, it has a seance where they gotta try to summon a ghost or whatever, but it does it all in unique ways that really make it unpredictable. This movie has horror conformities for sure, but it does it in ways that are so different. It completely turns them on their heads and makes them really unpredictable, and that's one of the things I love most about Hereditary. This movie really felt unpredictable, and I didn't know where the heck it was going. You think it's gonna go one direction in one scene that you think that horror movies are usually gonna go, but it doesn't do that. It completely switches the direction, and you're like, oh, we're going this route now. That's really cool. I thought it was gonna go some different route that other horror movies do, but it doesn't. I don't want to get too into the characters to this movie, because this movie, like I said, I want to be as vague as possible, because it's best if you don't know really anything. But Toni Collette is certainly the star of this movie. She is a fantastic actress, and in this movie, she gives one of the best performances, I think, of the entire decade. I'm not even kidding. She is insane in this movie. She is... oh my goodness. She plays a very jaded person that's gone through a lot of loss, and she's very cynical, and in this movie she's just trying to deal with all her problems, and she just has to deal with so much paranoia and stress and anger and insanity. Just so many insane things happen in this movie, and like I said, I don't want to tell you too much about this, but she goes completely bonkers in this movie. She loses her mind, and I can't even describe it. It's insane. Her performance feels so real at the same time. It doesn't feel over the top and exaggerated. It feels like a completely real, realistic performance. Like if somebody like this was going through this experience in real life, this is what the person would be like. Toni Collette is such a real actress. That's one thing I always notice about Toni Collette, is that she feels so incredibly real. I never feel like I'm watching an actress when I'm watching her in scenes. Even in a movie like Krampus, which is a goofy movie, she felt like the most real character in the movie, and she was the best performance. You haven't seen anything yet. She is magnificent in this movie. The other family members who I don't want to say a lot about are also fantastic. You got the father, who is really good. You got the son, who is extremely good for a teenage actor. You got the weird daughter who's going through these supernatural things similar to other horror movies. Her character goes in completely unpredictable directions, and it's another really strong child performance. She kind of blew me away in this movie, and just every actor in this movie feels so real. That's the thing I gotta stress about this movie. Most of this movie takes a long while for the supernatural stuff to start kicking in. A lot of this movie just feels like a drama about grief and loss and how to deal with it. And that just brought this movie to a new level. It felt so realistic. I didn't feel like I was watching a movie. There's a lot of long takes where the actors just play through their scenes. They just act, and that's it. There's not a lot of cuts where it cuts to a close-up, it cuts to another close-up. You just see one take of these people having a conversation, and it feels like you're eavesdropping on real conversation. The cinematography really aids to that as well, and the production design is kind of mind-blowing, and the sound design as well is so immersive. There were several times in the theater where I thought that something was behind me. I'm not even kidding. That rarely happens to me. The cinematography seriously feels like Roger Deakins. Like, there's so many shots that are just timed so perfectly, like where the sun is in this perfect place to make the shot look as good as possible. I can't even fathom having to time things like that. And also, there's a lot of shots in this movie where it is very dark. The lighting is very dark. A lot of the time, the cinematography is very dark and the movie looks very dark. But it all looks fantastic. It doesn't feel like you're not able to see the characters or what's going on. It does dark lighting so well, and as a person that has really worked with lighting before, I'm well aware that lighting is an extremely hard thing, and doing lighting in the dark like this and making it look so good, like how the heck do they do that? The camera moves so slowly. There's so many times where characters are just talking in a conversation, and behind them this stuff looks very dark and the camera's slowly moving. So there are so many times where the background is out of focus, but you can see things in the background. They're not in focus because the characters aren't in focus, and you can see things in the background. It reduces you to a little child, where you think you're seeing something in your bed at night when your room is really dark, but there's not actually anything there. There's so many shots in this movie where it felt like that. That's what I love so much about the production design. There's so many shots where I thought I saw something behind the characters in the dark, but then the camera focuses on it and it's not actually something. It's not a fake jump scare or anything. It's just this thing that adds to the unease. And there's like no jump scares in this movie. There's only like one or two, and they are both not fake. They're both completely real and warranted, and that's it. There's like no jump scares in this movie. Constantly there are scary things going on the screen, and they don't give you a release. It just happens. And that's the kind of horror that really gets to me. Apparently certain people are really scared by jump scares. I think it's scary if it's done in the right way, but in this movie, like, there's no jump scares. Scary things just happen, and there's this constant unease built through the music and the cinematography, and there's just... This movie's so stressful. It is so stressful. It is done so well. Every scene, everything in the frame was just so perfectly placed there to make it as freaky as possible. There are spooky scenes where something is in the background, like something scary is in the background, and they leave it there for like a minute, and it doesn't do anything. Like, oftentimes you see something in the background of a horror movie, and the lights will like turn off, and then you'll hear a scream, or like the thing in the background will jump at the character in the frame, but there are times where there's just something in the background, and it just stays there for like a minute long, for like 2 minutes or so. It just stays in that one spot, and it's so stress-inducing. And like I said, there's so many shots in this movie where you feel like you're seeing something in the background, and then the camera focuses on that thing, and it's not actually something. It's just like a thing that is in there that just kind of looks like a person when it's unfocused. It's freaking brilliant! The beginning of this movie also really reminds me of The Shining. Like, completely different stuff is going on. It's nothing like The Shining in terms of story, but like, there's just things that are happening that are just like, normal things are just happening on screen, right? Like, characters are having a conversation, it's a completely normal scene. But the way the scene is shot, and the way the music swells, and it's just like really intense, demented music is playing, and it just makes you feel uneasy. Normal things would be happening on screen, but the way it's filmed and the music that is put behind it just makes you feel so uncomfortable, and it sets up the tension that's to come in this movie. This is a slow-paced drama about loss and grief. And the supernatural horror aspect of this movie is secondary to the characters and the story that's going on. It has an incredibly riveting story that is extremely just disturbing and demented. That's the main focus of this movie, is the story and the characters and the themes. And once you finish the movie and put together in your head what you think the story was about, it makes the second watch all the better. It makes the film even better. You start to realize what the whole story is, and you start to put the puzzle pieces together, and then you want to watch the movie again because there's so much great foreshadowing. The first time you see it, you're kind of just like, okay, why is that there? But it is like, everything is there in this movie for a reason. Every little weird thing that happens has a significance later on. It's absolutely crazy. Every single moment and line of dialogue feels like it has a significance. And I want to watch it again with the knowledge of what the story is in my brain, so that I can watch this and be like, that's why that's there, that's why that's there, that's incredible foreshadowing. The horror aspect is all done fantastically, a lot of it is really subtle, but towards the end it gets really screwed up and really violent, and it just doesn't hold back. It doesn't hold back, and it doesn't give you jump scares either. Just crazy stuff starts happening on screen and you're just forced to watch it. That's what the best horror movies do. Crazy things just start to happen and you watch it. You don't get some sort of release. You just watch the crazy things happen and it sticks in your brain all the more. This movie is really difficult to watch. It is not happy at all. I don't think there's like a single joke or light moment in the entire movie. It is so hopeless and just depressing, and it is one of the most depressing movies I've seen in a while. And every aspect of filmmaking in this movie is pretty much perfect. The writing, the cinematography, the acting, just every part of it feels flawless. And this is going to be one of the best horror movies that I've seen, probably. This has got to be up there on maybe my top 10 horror movies. I'm being completely serious. This movie really impacted me. Like, this movie worked so well on every aspect, and I just need to praise A24 for putting out another fantastic movie. They just really, they brought their A game with this movie. I'm gonna give Hereditary an A+. If you guys are used to my channel, you know that I don't give those grades out just willy-nilly. I give them out very rarely, but I think Hereditary deserves it. I can't think of a single problem with this entire movie. I loved every frame. Every frame feels so meticulously crafted. It feels like Stanley Kubrick could have directed this movie. It's... If you're into weird artsy stuff like me, you'll really adore this movie. I know people that aren't into that kind of stuff might think this movie's boring, but if you're into creative, artsy, messed up filmmaking, this is a movie for you. Alright guys, if you like this video, be sure to like it, be sure to subscribe, be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and follow me on Letterboxd. I have a Letterboxd account, I have a Facebook page that I never use, all those good things. And I will see you all next time, and Incredibles 2 is out next week, what the heck?
There's no desperation. Oh, come on. What do you mean roll video?
Seconds.
We're fucking killing ourselves out here, and you're going to be ready.
I am too. I'm standing
So we
right
play
by
mood
the
music?
door. No, I can't
Yeah, but when you
hear.
came in like this, you said, just
We're sitting there because they say, wait a minute,
okay.
and then you say
Yeah,
on the radio,
but when you
go.
do it, you've got to look desperate, Shelley. You're just wasting everybody's time.